Hi, I'm Sharon Calvert, and this is Eye on Tampa Bay. And I'm here with Lou Green today, and we're going to talk a little bit about public policy, because there's good policies and there's bad policies.
There's probably more bad policies than good policies these days, wouldn't you say?
I'd say that's true, because what we've seen is the policies that are written today are voluminous.
Well, is it something where people are writing policies so they can go back home and say, I did something, instead of going back home and say, I fixed something?
That is a very good way of putting that. But today, I think we're getting a little bit smarter out there, because we had a recent election over in Pinellas County in the Congressional District 13 special election. And it seems to me that election, a lot of the voters went out rejecting bad policy, and that bad policy is Obamacare.
Well, yeah. That when you have a bill that the regulations attached to the bill become a stack of paper 7 feet high, there's nobody in the world that can figure that jigsaw puzzle out.
No, and there's no way they can enforce it either. No. I mean, it just becomes a mess. And so I think voters realize that, and we'll have to see going into the November elections how that's going to play out, because it sure seems to me that more seats may be up for grabs than originally people thought.
Oh, yeah, and there's going to be some surprises.
There is going to be some surprises.
Oh, yes. Now, let's put a crystal ball right here. And I'll be, Swami, and look at the crystal ball. What do you see in the crystal ball down the road? Do you think there's an awakening? Do you think finally the sleeping giant is paying attention?
Well, I definitely think with Obamacare we are now, because we're all being personally affected by it. But I also think that there's an awakening for just good public policy, and good public policy doesn't have to be ideologically driven, because what's lacking today with good public policy is just good old common sense.
Let people do what they're going to do. Let people run their businesses. Stay out of their hair. Don't concoct silly laws for the sake of saying that, look what I did for the people, when you're actually saying, look what I did to the people.
And I think that let's go back to 2012 in Hillsborough County, where there was a referendum that got on the ballot, local referendum, about putting financial information and financial impact information on any future referendums. Well, in our county that actually voted for Obama in 2012, that referendum passed. So there again, I think good public policy, common sense that says, when a voter is going to be asked to vote on something at the local level, that they actually know what it's going to cost or how much revenue might be generated. That's good public policy. So you can see that it doesn't matter where exactly you may, fall on the political spectrum. It's just some common sense.
Well, you and I were speaking coming over here about an idea, because of the internet and the incredible number of ways that people can easily communicate their ideas, that the elected officials should easily explain why they support something, why they vote for something, or why they voted the way they did, so that everybody can go to their site or to Facebook or Twitter or whatever and get the short, concise answer.
That's exactly right. We've got technology today where we can get an instantaneous communication out to voters. And I think Congressional Rep. Justin Amash has really led in the forefront of that, because he on Facebook explains every single congressional vote that he makes. And I think today, why going into an election and future elections, why don't we vet our candidates on it that says, we want to know why you voted a certain way. So when you take a vote, use that technology and let your constituents know, because we're not always going to get the FaceTime with you. Whether you're maybe easier locally, but if you're in Tallahassee, we certainly don't get those opportunities. But tell your constituents, how you voted and why. I think today it's easy to do, and there's no reason why our elected representatives can't do that. Well, they should do that.
When you buy a house, you usually get a home inspection so you can find all of the barnacles and everything in the house. When you buy a car, you do the research on Consumer Reports. Now you can do a research on the history of a used car. When you go to see a doctor, if you can go see the doctor, you talk to your friends and other people who might have gone there and had an experience, so you get some background on these people, or on the house or the car or the doctor or whatever, the dentist. But politicians seem to have gotten a pass along the way.
They have. It's actually been quite difficult sometimes to get their voting record. There are websites now at the national level that do track some of that, but that's just tracking the vote. That's not asking, why did you vote the way that you did? And the only person that can answer that question is the elected officials themselves. So again, we've got the technology, and I do believe that holding them accountable will help drive that good public policy, because good policies, I think, will generally benefit a broad audience, because it's something that makes sense, it's easy to understand, and you don't have to dance around why you voted for it. You voted for it because it's good public policy.
Yeah. Well, I had a little thought go through my brain, which didn't take long, but my feeling is every politician should have a letter of resignation when he accepts the job, and then there's a halftime show. If you don't make the cut, you don't make the cut. I don't think that'll pass because they vote on that.
Well, some folks, and I'm probably in that corner, that think that there are. It's very difficult to run against incumbents. I know that.
Oh.
I ran against one. Yeah. But if you've been in office, you should know how they voted. You should know why they voted, because their past will be a great reflection on what their future is going to look like. Yeah. So it's a good vetting tool, and we need to get to the point where the candidates themselves just say, you know what, I'm going to do like Justin Amish did, and I'm going to post all my votes online. I'm going to tell you why I voted, and we as constituents don't even have to ask, but it's just being done. Yeah,
well, that would give you a little bit of confidence in the voting booth of which person you'd like to vote for and why, in order to have some kind of assurance that they're going to follow through with what they talked about on the campaign trail.
Well, that's exactly right, because policy, if your principles, if you understand what your principles are, then your policies on various issues should be driven by where you stand, what you believe in, your values and your principles. So it actually makes it easier for a candidate to explain where they stand on an issue, or why they are for or against public policy issue, because whether it agrees with their principles or it doesn't. And so that kind of, I think, would take out, enabling the special interests or other influences to guide those decisions, rather than where you stand on your platform, your principles, and your values. And I think that's would be a comfort level to voters today, because there's just so much distrust.
Well, obviously there's distrust, but it's not that bad. But in some cases, it might be that bad.
Well, I think it's an issue, and with the form of government that we have, where we elect representatives to represent us, that distrust is not healthy. And so we need to do something, and I think our elected officials sort of need an attitude change that brings back that public trust. Because I think, until that happens, you are going to see the distrust there, and I don't think it's just healthy for our form of government.
Is it helpful then for the people who are watching this and reading the blogs and all to get a little bit involved and go to the meetings, hold them accountable and say, why don't you post the reasons you're voting the way you are?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm all for transparency. That's the reason why we do the blogs and why we're doing this. The more that the taxpayers, the voters, the constituents, the citizens, the more that we know, the better off we are. I mean, that's just the way our society needs to work. We need an informed electorate, and I've always said this, that voters will be smarter than you think when they're informed. I do believe when they're fully informed that they'll make the right decisions.
Yeah, well, good. And we're not going to fix it right here, but we're working on it.
Well, that's exactly right. And I think one of the reasons why we are doing this is just to make sure that the truth gets out there, because the truth seems to be also lacking. And unfortunately, the media today will only tell half of it, part of it, none of it, and that's not good. So we really do need to make sure that, all sides of an issue are provided, and that so voters have an opportunity to then make their decision.
Great. Very good.
Well, thank you. Well, Lou, it's been great. And this is another episode of Eye on Tampa Bay, and I'm Sharon Calvert.
I'm Lou Green, and Sharon's keeping an eye on Tampa Bay at all times.
Thanks, Lou.